Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Friday, April 17th meeting of the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority. We are in Fallon, Nevada, and as always, we are very grateful to Churchill County for allowing us to hold our meetings here and providing staff for our support. Jeff, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Ghetto, Mr. Frey,
Present.
Commissioner Steninger, Commissioner Gale,
Here.
Commissioner Perez,
He's here, but he'll be in a second.
Ms. Boland. No Nancy? Okay, well. Mr. Wagonseller. Commissioner Plaskett is not able to join us. Mr. Etchegary is not able to join us. And Mr. Gallagher is not able to join us. Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Edgar.
I'm present.
Commissioner Price. Commissioner Roos. Mr. Nixon. Mr. Dean. Commissioner Strickland.
Present.
Mr. Miller. Chair Easley.
Yep.
Commissioner Gottschalk.
Present.
Mr. Mancebo. Here. Ms. Hudson.
Present.
Commissioner Vogler. Mr. Gibson.
Right here.
All right. Mr. Rogers.
Present.
Alternates, Mr. Spross is unable to join us. Mr. Tibbetts.
I'm online.
Commissioner Hill. Commissioner Helming. Commissioner Robeson. Let's add him up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So, Chair Easley, we do have a quorum.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. Before we get started, I want to address the members who are here and reinforce how important it is that you contact Jeff prior to the meeting to let him know if you will be present or not. It is very frustrating to have to wonder when we get in here if we're going to have a quorum or not. It only takes a minute, so please let your colleagues who are not here today know that they need to contact Jeff prior to the meeting so that we are assured of a quorum. Will you rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thanks. Let's do some introductions. Jeff, do you want to?
I've got pretty much everyone's name that's on the screen, but Laurel, if you want to.
In the
introduce
audience,
yourself.
Laurel Saito, the Nature Conservancy.
yeah. And here?
There you go.
Kathy Erskine, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources.
Joe Cassiopo, State Engineer, Division of Water Resources.
It's great. Thank you. Item number 2 is public comment. This board does not take action on items that are brought up under public comment until they are placed on a future agenda for action. Is there any public comment? Hearing.
I have one, Leanna Carey.
Go ahead, Leanna.
Oh, did I get in the way? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say the growing concern of the data centers.
Yes, we have
Is
an item on
horrendous.
the agenda that addresses that today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let the record reflect that Commissioner Perez from Esmeralda County is here. Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, public comment is closed, and we'll move to item number 3, which is the approval of the agenda. Jeff, is there anything that we need to remove?
So when we get to the consent agenda, we'll want to, I'm requesting that we remove item double I for an inclusion of an additional invoice. Other than that, there are no other changes.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. We make one motion on all of the items considered under consent. They were included in your backup, and part of your obligation as a board member is to review those items before we vote on them. We're going to remove item number 2 under the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve 1, 3, and 4?
Motion is stated, Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Strickland.
Right.
Your mic is off.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fry. Are there any questions concerning the motion? Any
Madam
discuss-
Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, Brian Gale, Elko County. I'm wondering under the financial report for the end of March, I'm wondering if Esmeralda County actually intended to contribute $15,000.
Yes.
Rather than
That
okay.
$15,000 reflects their dues from last fiscal year as well as this fiscal year. So that is not a typo, and thank you for catching that. Is there any other comment? There's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any opposition to that motion? With no opposition, that motion passes. We'll move to item number 5. Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. You want to discuss number 2, please. I apologize. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on April 14th, so this was after the date that we sent out the packets in the agenda, I did receive an invoice from Schroeder Law Offices, and the invoice is for $362.19. There's some copies of it floating around here. If anybody is interested in seeing the details of it, we can put it up on the screen. But basically, this is for services primarily related to, well, back up, and I'll just back up and remind everybody that Schroeder Law Offices is representing a number of parties, including the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority and the amicus brief filed on behalf of Baker Ranches in their appeal to the Ninth Circuit. Those oral arguments were held, and Schroeder Law Offices did not argue the case, but they did follow the case and provide summaries and provide support. And so they did send an invoice to me on April 14th for $362 for those services. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about sort of a summary of the oral arguments. And I think I distributed last week or 2 weeks ago the email from Schroeder Law Offices that sort of summarizes the oral arguments, but we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that later on the agenda. But anyway, I wanted to include that in here. Otherwise, we're waiting another 3 months, and so I just thought we could do it now.
Thanks, Jeff. Is there a motion to approve the financial report and quarterly expenditures?
I will move to approve the financial report and quarterly expenditures.
Motion by Commissioner Fray. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Mancebo. Questions concerning the motion or additional discussion? Questions about the additional invoice? Is there any opposition to the motion? With no opposition, that motion passes. Item 5. This is approval of CNRWA's fiscal year 2026-2027 budget. Jeff, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. This is pretty similar to what the current fiscal year budget looks like. A couple of notable exceptions, I suppose, here. First of all, this will be the first year, at least in the last 3 years, that we haven't included in revenues any water conservation infrastructure, water conservation and infrastructure initiative grant funds, the ARPA funds that were awarded to CNRWA under the Water Rights Retirement Program grant. That's pretty much closed out. There's really no remaining budget, but it needs to go through an official closeout. So we don't anticipate any revenues there or any expenditures for that matter. The revenues are the same again, and this year, Esmeralda County's dues or assessments are still only $7,500. We haven't increased them to $15,000 and don't intend to. Under expenditures, there are a couple of changes. I've reduced the amount for the executive director, that's basically my LLC services, from $45,000 to $40,000. And there's only been maybe a couple of years where I've even come close, or my LLC has come close to expending the maximum $45,000. So I've reduced that to $40,000. I've reduced the executive assistant, that's Sam Merlino's budget, from $3,000 to $2,000, and that's again only because we just haven't exceeded even $2,000 in the previous years. The groundwater monitoring program is $15,000. That was increased in the last budget in an amendment to account for the changeover in services from Niall Pennington to Mr. Wagonseller. The two changes that I'm asking for are increases, and the first one is for the Legal Analysis Council. That is CNRWA's contract with Debbie Leonard for counsel on primarily services related to review of legal matters, water law, legislation, those kinds of things. We expanded a little bit to include maybe some more administrative types of things, but going into the next legislative session, we're now in the interim, we're starting to see a lot of activity, and so I don't, right now, under the current $10,000 not to exceed amount, we're well below that, but I just think that having that increase is a safety net for us, and we don't have to come back here every 3 months and try to get an increase or seek an increase and put things on hold. So I'm requesting that be increased from $10,000 to $20,000 for the next fiscal year. And then government affairs, sub-item F under professional services. And again, we're in the interim leading up to the 2027 legislative session, which will begin in February, hopefully just a 4-month session. And our previous budget for that was $6,000. I'd like to increase that to $20,000, and I think that really reflects sort of more, some more participation and involvement that I'm not going to be able to do, or not sure it's really something I should be doing anyway, because again, it's a lot of activities, setting up meetings, meeting with legislators, attending meetings. That's not to say that I won't be representing CNRWA. I certainly hope to and plan to, but that would be primarily when it's presenting bills, testifying on bills, and working towards maybe some agreement on other bills. But more of the day-to-day stuff is really what I don't even think it would be covered under my contract in terms of the amount that we would need to do it if I were there, sort of every day or day to day. I think it's just better having a professional government affairs organization or person do that. I don't know who that would be, and we could come back and present some options for who that might be at the next meeting. But anyway, I wanted to increase that budget from 6,000 from the last, wouldn't have been last year, the year before, from the 2025, 2026 budget to 20,000 for the next year's, next biennium budget.
And Jeff, whoever is identified and we contract with to provide those legislative services, you'd be working with them very closely?
Yes.
And they would be reporting directly to you?
Yes,
Okay.
and typically, the way it works is that these organizations, these firms, government affairs firms, they have multiple clients, and one of the most important things we would want to look for in having someone represent CNRWA is who are they representing, and are there any conflicts?
Yeah.
And so that kind of narrows the field a little bit. And then also, there are very large organizations and firms that do this work. They're, sort of smaller and boutique firms, if you will, that specialize on and have more experience in natural resources and public lands and water and those kinds of things.
What
And
would your
so,
plan be to find somebody?
I think probably the best approach would be maybe to have some discussions with our legislative working group, and then narrow it down to maybe 3,
Okay.
and then send invitations out to the 3 or maybe more, and then sort of the way we did it when we when this board selected Debbie Leonard to be our
Oh,
legal
yeah,
counsel.
and then have them present at the summer meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So other than that, those are the other the only changes. And again, we have a projected healthy ending fund balance going into the next fiscal year, and so be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Jeff? Any discussion of this item? Is there a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Brian Gale again, Elko County. So
Brian.
I noticed that the beginning fund balance is 182,000 and the ending fund balance is 123,000. Do we need to consider increasing each county's annual assessment, or is this a one-year thing? The difference in balances.
Right. So thank you, Commissioner. So this is the budget. That's probably not what's going to end up being spent, although more likely so next year because it is a legislative session. So that would be, the $20,000 for the government affairs contract, and then also, again, these amounts in here are not to exceed amount. It's not likely, I shouldn't say it's not likely, but in the past, the executive director expenses, actual expenses were a lot less than 45,000 or 40,000, and that was the same for some of these other contracts, including, for example, the on-call hydrogeological services. That's budgeted at 10,000. I think this year we're probably at 2,000. So it's really, again, a not to exceed amount, overestimated. And even if we spent all of these, up to all of these amounts in the budget, again, we still have a healthy ending fund balance that I don't think it would necessitate an increase in assessments.
Okay, in that case, I move to approve the budget as presented.
Thank you, Brian.
This is Shayla Hudson. I'll
Yeah.
second.
Thank you. Motion by Brian, second by Shayla. Are there questions concerning the motion or additional discussion on this proposed budget? Is there any opposition to the motion? With no opposition, that item passes, and thank you for your comments. Item number 6 is an update by the Nevada State Engineer. Joe, is it Cacioppo? I got it. Joe Cacioppo.
Joe, do you want to come up here?
Come on up
Or
here
you can
and-
stay there.
Either way, whatever you want.
Okay, whatever you want to do.
As long as you can hear me.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let me just do maybe a quick,
If it's better for the folks tuning in, I'm happy to sit up there.
I don't think it matters.
Oh,
Okay, well, so I'll just do a quick intro for Joe, for the group. So as I'm sure you all know, and we've been talking about this and you've been reading about this, there have been some changes at the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the Division of Water Resources. And Joe, you went over to NDWR as Deputy Administrator back in February, was it?
End of February.
End of February. Joe has a long career in water and engineering. He was the principal civil engineer over at RCI. Worked with Joe on a couple of projects in Lincoln County. And he is a registered professional engineer and a water rights surveyor, Army veteran, member of our Carson City School Board for 12 years and president and other activities. And he became a state engineer on March 30th.
Correct.
So you've been on the job for a couple weeks. And
Veteran now.
And so, actually, Joe and I share a sort of a common malady here. Joe and I played on a Carson City Rec softball team many, many years ago, and we both share the same dislocated shoulder injury from playing Carson Rec softball. But anyway, so we're happy to have Joe here and Kathy Erskine with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. You are the Senior Policy Advisor to now the new director over there, none other than Vincent Guthrow, who many in this room and on the call are very familiar with from NACO. And so, Joe, thank you, and Kathy for being here. Again, we recognize you're, just feeling things out and a lot going on, but I think we're just interested in meeting you, getting to hear maybe a little bit about what you're thinking about, what maybe your first 100 days look like, priorities, things of that nature. And I think the other thing that I would be interested in, and we've had these conversations with your predecessors about what CNRWA can do to assist your division in securing the tools and resources and funding that you need to do your job. But beyond that, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. For the record, Joe Cassiopo. As Jeff said, he stole some of my thunder, but that's good. Real quick about myself, wasn't born in Nevada, but have lived here 30 plus years, my wife and I raised our 3 children here. They're now young adults. Worked for Resource Concepts for about almost 30 years. Prior to that, worked for a small firm in Carson City, primarily at that time doing mining, not mining engineering, but a little bit of mining engineering, a lot of landfill work. Then I got into Resource Concepts and did a variety of things, water resources, entitlements, planning, permitting, design of a variety of residential and construction type projects throughout the state, throughout several states actually. Did my schooling in California, so born in New York, educated in California, if you will. Sorry, parents took us there. And then found my way to Nevada. And again, we've been here over 30 years, and this is home. We love it. So getting the opportunity to come to work for the Division of Water Resources was, quite an honor. I appreciated it. Leaving my prior firm where I was a co-owner wasn't an easy decision. Really liked RCI. I thought we had some good people. But the opportunity came up and it was interesting to me, and here I am. As Jeff said, I officially was appointed state engineer March 30th, so I'm very new at the position, just kind of getting my feet wet and understanding what it is we do well, what it is we do that we could make some improvements on, and just remembering what our focus is, and that's to, try to responsibly manage the waters of the state and work with folks who rely on that water. Communities, whatever the communities are involved in, but everything from agriculture, mining, all these things, water is an important resource, and we got to find a way to balance it and make it work for everybody, recognizing where we're at. There's more demand than there is water available. We all know that. I'm not telling you folks anything you don't know. just some of my background while I've been in Nevada, aside from RCI, which where I spent the most of my time. I was a member of the Northern Nevada Development Authority. Officially, I kind of still am. I just gave them my official termination. Sorry, can't do both of those. So, but I served with them for about 10 years, was a trustee, as Jeff said, 12 years with the Carson City School District, was president during those 12 years 3 different times, was a commissioner for the Carson City Parks and Rec Commission, president of the American Society of Civil Engineers Nevada section, and for very short term as a director on the Carson City Chamber of Commerce. So I can appreciate anybody who sits on a board. It's, it's
Lots of thankless jobs you've had.
It can be thankless at times, but it's rewarding at the same time, and so I understand that. So thank you for what all of you do. Just some updates on the division. As I'm getting older, I've got to get these $9 readers now, so bear with me. I did want to, real quick, thank Chris Thorson at the division. He served as acting state engineer in between Adam's departure and my arrival. I thought Chris did a great job, and I really appreciated what he did. Chris is still with us. He did not have any ambitions at this point in time of staying a state engineer. That might be something he looks at down the road, but he's still with us. He's one of our deputy administrators for the division, and he's, one of my right-hand people, so I really appreciate what he's done. Just wanted to recognize our new director, as Jeff said, Vincent Guthrow. He came to us from NACO. Real good guy, real open to working as a team and, just trying to figure things out as he gets his feet under him as well. But I think he's going to be a good person to work with. So we're happy to have him. Just some history. Jason King, who was our state engineer for about 10 years, he retired about 7 years ago. We convinced him to come back as a contract employee for a temporary period of time. Part of it's helping me get my feet under me, but the other bigger part of it is looking at how the division used to do things versus how we do things now, what we can learn from the past, maybe what we're doing a little better now. And, there's pros and cons with all of it, but his insight has been valuable, and I've appreciated it. And he's going to be with us until around June. And I'll get into a little bit of what we've been doing at the division. First, vacancies. We're operating pretty lean. James Balatin, who was one of our deputies and an attorney, he resigned just a few weeks ago, went to work in Reno for a private law firm. So we have 2 deputy positions open right now, the one that I left to become state engineer and then the one he left. So I believe those advertisements just hit the street, and we'll wait and see what kind of interest we get in those. But aside from the 2 deputy positions, we're looking to fill a senior hydrogeologist modeling position. And overall, we have about 15 open positions right now at the staff level. So, we're short. And if you look back historically, by having these many positions and bringing in new people, we've brought in a lot of sharp young people, but they're young, they're new, and they're learning. And so there's a lot of training that has to go on. But we went from probably, on average, 8+ years of experience at the division. Now we're down, especially if you look at the water rights side of things, we're down to maybe under 3 years of experience. So I do kind of, as I go and talk to people, ask for a little bit of grace. We got to get these folks up to speed so that they're feeling good about what they do. They understand the complicated applications that we get and how we have to treat those, and just kind of working them through the process. And that's where Jason's coming in. He's helping us with some of that, just helping us get people up to speed. We do have John Benedict, who some might know. He worked for the division, modeling. He's helping us out on the same thing on a part-time contract basis. And he's helping us with hydro assessments, hydro staff development, aquifer storage and recovery, permitting, and looking at things like that. And so he's helping Kip Allander kind of get the young people in that section up to speed. Again, smart people, sharp people, but just, need to gain some experience. And I can say that freely because I'm in that boat. It takes a while to get up to speed. So I can appreciate what they're going through. Really, my goals as state engineer are, my biggest goal is collaboration. I think one of the issues we've been hearing is that we've kind of become a closed entity at times, and we're not communicating as much as maybe we have in the past. And there's times when we can communicate more than others, and I understand that. So I want to have responsible communication, but I think there's room for more communication. And so communication, cooperation, maybe some more transparency, and just overall efficiency. We recognize we have backlogs. We recognize, the importance of getting permits processed through our office quickly, and we're working on that, and we're going to work to try to make that more efficient for everybody. It won't happen overnight, we know that, but I think in a fairly short order, you're going to see that we're doing some of these things. And that's what we're hoping to achieve. And as part of communicating with people, recognizing what we think we're doing well, what we think we're not doing well, and where we're trying to improve. And, people aren't shy about telling us where we're not doing things right. And I'm happy to have those conversations. Let's have them, because we can't get better and we can't communicate better unless we're hearing from people. And at the same time, if we're doing things well, we don't hate hearing that as well. So, let us know what we can, what we're doing. So really, to accomplish these goals, there's a few things we're doing. We're doing staff training for the folks we have. We're also staff recruiting and retention. That's a big thing. It's one thing to bring people on, but anybody who's ever been in a situation where you're bringing staff on and you're working with folks, you have to find a way to keep them. And so that's what we're working on, is how do we encourage the folks we have? How do we bring them on? How do we keep them on and develop that expertise so that we're back to these 8, 10 plus years of experience where we used to be? One of the things Jason always told us is when he was state engineer, he had a lot of experience, a lot of people that were there 10, 15, 20 years, and we don't have as many of those people now. So we're, they've retired and whatnot, and that happens. You hate to see your good people retire, but at the same time, that's kind of our goal someday, is to, to enjoy life a little bit more.
I have to say, when I was a county commissioner for Nye County, I always enjoyed working with Jason. Enjoyed it. So I'm glad to hear that he's back with the department.
Thank you. I'll let him know that
please
too,
let him
because
know.
he likes to hear that.
Yes.
Ditto.
Yeah, no, thanks. He's really, he had big shoes to fill, and it's been hard to fill those. And we've had, over the years, I think good state engineers, some had different priorities than others, and they worked their way through, the process the best they could. And I just want to really kind of reach out just generically and thank all of them, because it's not an easy job. I'm kind of in a honeymoon period right now, and I get that. And, I kind of jokingly say I've ordered my helmet and Kevlar vest, and it's coming. So, give me a little bit of time to get that. But the staff training, the recruitment and retention, and then this really what our focus is going to be on the water rights side of it is, RFAs, if you will, are kind of our bread and butter, the applications. We got to get them through our process, and then, as it gets through the process, where we can get things certificated and get those certificates out to people. We have quite a backlog, and we know that, and we're really going to focus hard on a couple of areas. One of them is the ready for action process. Getting these permits in the door, getting them looked at, making sure that if they need hydro assessments, we're figuring that out early on. We kind of do on the hydro side now a preliminary screening to see if it needs it at all. Sometimes if something's simple, it doesn't need it. We don't want to bog it down in that. But where it does, maybe it doesn't need a complex review. Maybe it needs a complex review. And we want to recognize that early. So by the time it gets through this RFA portion of our process, we've already visited that. Where we ran into some trouble is it would go through this process. It would get to what we call the RFA review. And at that point, somebody would look at it and say, oh, this needs a hydro assessment. Well, we already exhausted some time. So part of our efficiency process is to recognize that earlier so that that's already in the queue or maybe has already been done. So by the time it gets to our RFA process, we've been there already. And we don't have to circle the wagons and go back to the beginning. Like I said, certificates, proof of beneficial use and extensions of time, they're all kind of intermingled. And so we can't ignore everything to focus on one, but our top priorities certainly are these requests for actions. We got to recognize that that's our biggest backlog. That's kind of our bread and butter. If we don't get through that, the rest of this stuff just gets put on hold. And so we are working collectively internally to figure out how we're doing this. Right? You know, again, I've been there 3 weeks. We're at some early stages. I've been bouncing ideas off of Chris, off of Jason King, and some of our folks. And we think we got initially a good system in place that we're going to try, and then we're going to adjust it along the way. Where it's working, great, we're going to keep doing it. Where we find out it's not working the way maybe we thought it would, we're going to adjust. You know, we're going to be flexible. We're also going through a digitization, a modernization plan, just so that things are over time going to be more readily available. It allows us to look at things a little easier. As you can imagine, we have a tremendous amount of paper in that building. And so a lot of the older stuff we're digitizing and creating a format to where even though maybe some of the paper copies aren't going to be there anymore, we have a filing system that works and we can find things, and we're cautiously doing it. We're not scanning and then tossing papers. We're keeping them, double checking that they are where we can find them and everything's working smooth. And that's quite the process. We received a grant to do some of that and the modernization, and we're working within the grant to get this done as efficiently as we can. One of the things we're working on, which I like, is this application status tracking dashboard, which initially will open up internally, and the goal is eventually to open up to the folks on the outside. So you can go onto the website and you can see where your application is. And I think that's big because the process it's complicated. And if you look at a flow chart of how it works, it takes a minute to look at. But this will allow you to see kind of, where it is. And not every piece of it moves at the same pace, but at least you can get a sense of, where am I? And then if we have questions, you have questions, we can have these conversations. And
Joe, when do you think you'll roll that out?
we're trying to roll it out internally. It's going to take, I don't know exactly is the true answer, but
Yeah.
probably over the
Because
next.
you're building it.
Over the next
Yeah.
few months. We're building it. Our IT
Yeah.
section's helping us with that. And then we're going to debug it internally, because what we don't want to do is release it to the public.
Right.
And that's where we find out we have bugs and holes
Yeah.
and stuff. So I don't have a good answer for you as to
That's
when it's
okay.
going to be
That's good
released,
enough.
but
Yeah.
we want to make sure, we're doing it right. Just some statistics for folks. Like I said, we recognize we have some backlog and we're working on that. But DWR, we receive over 1,000 applications per year, sometimes a lot more, it just depends. But on average, it's over 1,000 applications. Right now, we have a backlog of about 2,300 applications. But 1,000 of those are the complicated ones. There's litigation involved, there's protests, there's a variety of things going on. So some of these aren't exactly within our control. But the ones that are in our control is what we want to kind of focus right now that immediate attention on and try to get those through the process.
So a 2,300 backlog, and you're down 15 employees.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's certainly an uphill battle. And again, when we talk about staff retention, we certainly need to demand a certain amount of work from our staff. But again, recognizing that if they don't have all the tools to do their job, they can only go through these things so quick. But that doesn't mean we don't have senior people looking at things. We do. We have our senior folks helping them through it, in some cases looking at these applications, many cases looking at these applications themselves. And our goal is to take a significant chunk out of that backlog in a relatively short order. Don't have an exact time, but I'd like to think over the next few months, that's going to, we're going to start seeing a chunk coming out of these things. Again, there's a variety of causes for this, which I mentioned, but just some stats in 2026, actions taken to date on applications. We have 32 that we've been able to take action on within the first 6 months of them being submitted. About 30%.
For 2026?
This is 2026,
Fiscal year 26?
fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're only in the fourth.
No, we're
month,
only
so-
into the fourth. And so this is really, if you look at it, 9 months into things, if you will.
Okay.
Round numbers. Where, 32%, we're getting to action within 6 months. About another 30% that's taken up to a year. And then while we're not a full 2 years into it, about 11% is taking that 1 year to 2 year kind of period to do. And then when we look at temporary applications, we're getting through about 40% of them within the first 6 months. And so those are things I look at, and I can ask those questions, why do we have a large percentage being here instead of here? And so when we talk about improving efficiencies and whatnot, for me, it's learning internally, why are we where we are? And the ones that are being processed, a little more quickly, we're happy with that. But, I always look at things like if something's taking 2 years, baby steps, if you will. Something similar, can we get through it in 18 months? Is that reasonable? If not, why? Convince me why. Let's figure out where we can speed things up. And again, keeping in mind, we don't want to speed it up so much that we're making mistakes, because then we're not doing anybody any favors. We have to be responsibly efficient. Extensions of time, there's been a backlog reduction from 136 days to 78 days since January, and we get about 4,000 extensions of time a year. So that's a good part of the work some of our folks do, but we've basically reduced that backlog time-wise almost in half. Reports and conveyance, that goes through our title section. That section is fully staffed, and they are exceeding the goals they've set for themselves. They like to get to these within 86 days, and I kind of laugh to myself. I don't know why we chose 86 instead of 90. But the good news is their acting time has been 81 days or less, so they're feeling pretty good about themselves, and and I'm happy, and we'll revisit those goals as well. And that's kind of the update really I wanted to give coming in here, just a little introduction about who I am and what we're trying to do internally. But really, right now, I'm just getting my feet under me, understanding what it is we do internally.
Oh, we wanted you to say you were getting your feet wet.
Yeah, they're pretty wet. We're in Nevada, they can only get so wet. And we recognize the year we're having too. This isn't doing anybody any favors. So we're going to be looking to coordinate with folks and figure out how we get through this. I'm sorry?
What's the size of your department?
We have about all in all, we have about 100, for round numbers, 115 people. 80
Is that full staffing? What it should be, 150?
What it should be. Most of those folks are in Carson City, 85 to 90 or so people. Then, of course, we have people throughout the state, but small offices there. But yeah, when we're looking at, 100, 115 people, and we have roughly 15 vacancies.
Yes.
It's a big percentage of vacancies.
Yes, it is.
And and I'm no stranger to that, working in the private sector for all those years. You're always short people come and go, and you have to make do, but the process is a little different on the public side than the private side. But finding ways to, take the positives out of both sides and apply it to what we're doing here.
Joe, would you be open to taking 10 minutes or so of questions and comments from the board members?
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's a question I can't answer right now, I'm happy to get back to folks too, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to open up the floor, but I want to start with Jeff.
Well, thanks, Joe, for that presentation, actually. Those are all things that we have been talking about for some time. I guess I have a comment and then I have a question. The ability to attract and retain employees, and I imagine that many of those, or if not most of those, are either engineers or technical people, is concerning, I'm sure, to everybody, and especially you. At one time, there was discussion about, and I don't know if this was ever done or if it's still, or maybe it was done, is to really see about getting a priority put on a classification study for those technical people. Is that been done? And then the other comment I want to make is this, because, and you heard this at our HRBWA meeting, I think, as well. CNRWA does review applications on the monthly report. And because this group meets quarterly, we often find ourselves in a situation where we'll see an application that was submitted, in January, early January, and our next meeting isn't scheduled until, March or April, and it runs its course. And in the meantime, or maybe like there's some actual applications that are in the monthly report that we're going to talk about in agenda item number 11, I think it is, where an application has been filed, but the application hasn't been uploaded, so we don't have any information. But even when there is information uploaded, many times there just isn't enough information to make a decision. And so we have a protocol and a policy on what processes and what the justifications would be for CNRWA to file a protest. We go through that and the protest is filed. And then who knows, maybe we get together with the applicant or we wait for the applicant's response to the protest. I guess what I'm wondering about is, for those applications that are filed, since we don't necessarily see anything more than the 2-page application and maybe an attachment, but now you're talking about moving up the process so that you're doing an initial screening on those applications that might require some more studies. I'm trying to figure out a way that, one, CNRWA can be more efficient in terms of trying to recognize those issues ahead of time, and work on those so that once those protests are filed, as you know, then it's a whole different ballgame, right? And I guess my question here is, if and when protests are filed, does that does that go down a different path? Because it's going to be important for us to, I guess, and maybe all of us, to get maybe the word out or somehow make it clear that, and I think this is being done more so in the Humboldt Basin, primarily with the larger mining operations, come to a presentation to the board ahead of time of filing a complex
Great idea.
application so that we can see what it is that you're planning on doing, and then by the time the application shows up at the state engineer's office, we have a pretty good sense of what it's about. And the other sort of, I wouldn't say pet peeve, but concern that we've had also is the separate processes, and we're going to talk about this also when we talk about 3M plans later on the agenda, but a lot of these larger projects are going through a NEPA process, and they're having to provide similar information, if not even more information, to the BLM than they are to the state engineer. And so when I look at those records of decision and I see what the BLM says and your office says about water rights, it's like, well, go talk to the state engineer. Well, but wait a second, you're here with the BLM going through a NEPA process, so why can't we see your groundwater model? Why can't we talk about those things now as opposed to waiting until you file the application and then we end up having to protest it?
Yeah, and those are questions, some of which I've heard before, and concerns, and I can appreciate that. Tackle the easy one first, the reclassification. We are looking at that. There's, one of the issues we run into is salary. When you're trying to hire engineers and people with technical experience, they quite simply can make more money outside the state system than they can inside the state system. So, competing with some of these folks, it's hard. And so looking at what positions do we need certain licensed folks like engineers and whatnot, and where maybe we don't, and reclassifying some of those positions to maybe open it up to a broader group of folks that would still be qualified, but maybe don't need to have certain licenses and whatnot. So we're going through those kinds of things internally. And again, with the new director, we're going to be having conversations about what our needs are and what some of our struggles are. And we started having those already, but as short a time as I've been there, he's been there even shorter. So he's wrapping up his second week. And so we're starting to have those kinds of conversations, but we need to figure out the right people we need with the right qualifications, and then whether or not the licensing's part of it and whatnot is, how important is that piece of it? And so that we get the right folks in, to the right positions. As far as the application statuses, a couple of things we're doing. and some of these are going to be more helpful than others depending on who I'm talking to, but we did set up on the website, there's a place where you can submit questions, and those questions get routed to folks in a quick amount of time, you know, like within a day or two, they're going to get routed to the right folks. And sometimes if it's a simple question or even something that might be a little more complex and hey, it's complex, but I need to have a conversation with somebody, we can route those to people so that that concern is known and that phone call can make back, or that phone call can be made to people. One of the things sometimes we struggle with are those phone calls. You know, it's instead of getting a phone call, people get a letter. And a lot of times you just pick up a phone and call somebody. You can ask a question, you can, you know, maybe move things along or put somebody's mind at ease or whatever it might be. Of course, once it goes to protest, conversation gets a little trickier. I can't just have a conversation with an applicant. Now we have to have everybody involved in it, and rightly so. We don't want anybody to think something's going on behind their back. But we also are setting up kind of a non-technical internal tracker. So if somebody calls and has a question, this is a person that isn't in a position where they're making decisions or anything like that, where they might say something out of turn. But it's just, I need to speak to somebody, I need to find out where something is, I need to find out what the status is. They can provide some of that information or route you to a person to where you can get those kinds of questions answered. But we are running into problems where we have people that are in a decision-making capacity of some sort. And then if somebody calls them, Jeff calls them up and says, I need to know about this, and they give him an answer, now somebody on the other side's like, whoa, wait a minute, we're having conversations behind our back. So we're trying to do this in a responsible manner, but recognizing that you need to be able to talk to somebody. And then we're creating, on the water rights side, a database, Jeff, more to your point. And this is just starting to take shape. It's kind of in the draft stage internally, and next week we're going to release it to our managers and whatnot with the idea of, you know, ask these things questions, load in permits, do this and that, and basically do your best to break this thing. You know, overwhelm it, see where it's working, where it's not working, so that we can tweak it and get it ready. But eventually, that's going to be something that's going to be available to where, you know, it'll just be a better interface, and you can see where things are at a little better than maybe what you're seeing now. And so we're hoping that that's going to become a useful tool that, you know, we'll start off debugging it in-house. But this database, I think, is going to be important. And then on like these 3M plans, and when folks are coordinating on the environmental side or the water side, you know, we're struggling with that right now. The biggest issue I'm seeing with like 3M plans is consistency. What do we need to see from our side of things in these plans? And, you know, should that be something that's in policy? Should it be something that's in regulation? You know, I want to make sure we come up with a system that when we're saying this is going to need a plan, that folks can prepare these plans and they know what pieces, you know, there's always going to be something specific to a certain project, but it's going to have all the basics in there. So whether you're the one who has to write the plan or whether you're somebody who, hey, I need to know what's in the plan and is it addressing certain things, you know what the general components are going to be. And then we can go back to some of the things I talked about up front in terms of, you know, getting some questions answered and whatnot. But I think some of this collaboration and transparency, Jeff, is what I'm trying to do. And so I don't have all the answers for you now, but we're trying to get to where this is a more user-friendly process.
That sounds
where
like a
it
good
can be.
start, though.
Yeah, where it can be, I want it to be.
No, that's great. And by the way, I would acknowledge that I can't say that I've gone through the website and directory contact list for every state agency there is, but for DCNR and for the Division of Water Resources and NDEP, you can go to the website and you can find individuals by name, by telephone number, by email, and what they do. That's really helpful, and that's not something that is sort of replicated across the board. So
No, I agree. I mean, we all know it's frustrating when you have a question. I don't care if it's unrelated to everything we're talking about, but you try to call and you can't get to anybody. It's
Right.
push these buttons and then at the end, nothing happens. And so, yeah, we don't want to be that kind of agency for sure.
All right. Board members, directors, does anyone have any questions for Joe?
I have a a question. My occupation is
Yeah,
farmer,
and-
but I've got a lot of government experience.
For the record, that's Norm Frey.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. And I started, I think I've worn out 10 state engineers in my life since 1983. So a little experience. 7 times through the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, a lot of stuff.
Beware.
And so some experience, not just a farmer, but just a farmer. And some of my, as much as I've been involved, when I receive a communication from the state engineer's office, I just received one for, it's time to renew my extension for a permit number. I got to spend a lot of time to go find out where that permit is located. Quarter section would be okay. An assessor parcel number associated with that letter would be a little better, but if there's possibility of putting an address, or like the power company, as many bills as they send out, you get to choose a nickname for your account. And it would jar the memory that this is your commercial well permit at 3975 Reno Highway. It is a request for manner of use, but those letters are going to generate a lot of calls to your office. What's this about? Okay. They're going to generate a lot of letters or comments, phone calls for your office and create more time for you. I also think that in some instances, some extensions of time deserve a 5-year extension. Because if I'm putting in new fields or something like that, sometimes budgetary constraints, I can't just pop that field into production and get on to the PBU. If I've got development property, I don't know whether I'm going to develop a hotel, a truck stop, a car wash, what's going to be developed. And those things take time to do on my end of the world. And so if I had the availability of a 5-year extension of time, sometimes it creates a little confusion in my mind because you've gone down the road so far that, oh, I have an application in there. But to have a 5-year extension of time would be grand, I think, in the long run.
Depending on what the project is, you're saying.
Yes, very dependent upon the project, whether I'm putting in new land or trying to make development decisions.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. The extensions of time, there is a statutory element to it. And so, we recognize we have to work within that. But generally speaking, what I find with some of the extensions of times that I've looked at is the more information an applicant can provide us, the better. Sometimes we'll get requests and they're very detailed, and other times they're very vague. And when it's vague, it takes more time. It's challenging, and folks are more prone to say, well, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot going on. Does somebody need 5 years? Or couldn't they do less? And so really just having a good document of, this is what we're doing and why really can be helpful. And then within, again, the statutory requirements, we can look at things like that. So I just in short, I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I know things take a lot of time. I don't farm, but I've around folks that do. And I always like to tell people, everything's easy when you're not the one doing it. And so when you're trying to figure out what you need for, what you're doing, folks don't, they don't understand the complexities of it sometimes. So the more information, the better, because no one knows better than the applicant what they're trying to do and why they're thinking they're going to need this much time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Floor is open.
Maybe
I've got one.
Yeah, go
Madam
ahead.
Chairman?
Yeah, just identify
yeah.
yourself for the record.
Very good. Brian Gale, Elko County Commission. Firstly, Mr. Casiopo, thank you. Thank you for filling the spot. That's a pretty important role in this state, and I'm glad you're willing to step up to it. And yeah, you got a lot of very significant issues to solve. Thanks for your presentation today. I really appreciate seeing what your view of the office is and how you intend to proceed. Firstly, I just second the previous mention of extensions of time. I'm wondering if you're getting 1,000 applications a year and 4,000 extensions of time applications a year. Of course, that's, as you said, that's statutory, but maybe looking at that, maybe making the time longer or being more rigid with the denial of extension of time might encourage people to get on the stick a little quicker. Let's see. And then specifically, Elko County recently passed a resolution regarding Nevada public lands temporary relinquishment of about half the groundwater in the Dixie Creek 10-mile basin. I'm wondering if you've received, in your extensive time in office, have you received and reviewed that resolution yet?
The answer on that is I am familiar with it, but I honestly haven't. It's on my reading list in very short order, though.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then just to mention on extensions of times, we are working on the regulation. We've been talking about bill drafts and a variety of things, obviously, this time of year. And we're looking at trying to make that form a little more straightforward, basically shorter, more to the point, so that hopefully that helps with some of the efficiency and clears up some things too. We find that sometimes there's some confusion, are we asking the same question a couple times, that kind of thing.
Other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Perez, Esmeralda.
There, I got it. Thank you for the introduction.
Sure.
From Esmeralda County, and I would say Esmeralda County probably has the most issues per capita in Nevada. I could be wrong, but I think we're up there at the top. I would like to say the staff that you're walking into, for us in Esmeralda County, we've gone up there and they're super friendly, great people. I think your idea of an information tracker position is a great one, because a lot of times we'll drive up to deliver something and we get a conversation with someone to try to get some direction, because we've put something in and had it direct. That's a hard way to learn, is to put something in, have it rejected, then you got to go back and correct it. But you are in a tough spot, and I wish you the best. And don't forget about us in Esmeralda County, a tiny little place, or actually a large real estate place with not a whole lot of people, but a lot of problems. But thank you for taking that position.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And I will I know I said it before, but we do really have a great staff of people there. They care, and that's the first step. If you don't care, what can you do? But they really do care. They're doing good work, and they do deserve some pats on the back. I mean, they're a good group, and my job is to help them, gain the experience the younger people need to do more. And I kind of tell my wife real quick, just because she's not in this world. She's a kindergarten school teacher in Carson City. And she's like, well, what does it mean to be the state engineer? And I said, well, I guess in simplest terms, back in the days when our kids were playing soccer and I would ref sometimes, I would coach. It's like being a referee in a soccer game.
Oh.
No matter what call you make, half the people are going to be happy with it and half the people are going to not be happy with it.
And everybody's trying to kick something.
Well, that is true. And as a referee, you're trying not to get kicked. So, yeah, thanks for adding to that.
Are there other questions? That goes for you too, Laurel. No?
I've got yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, just identify yourself for the record.
Trenton Gibson, White Pine County. So, well, sir, I don't envy your job. I really don't at all. But something I want to bring up, for those that aren't aware, the state water engineer has a well drillers advisory board. And their primary job is to interview well drilling license applicants once they pass the written test and determine whether or not these applicants actually know what they're talking about, or if they're just, book smart and, memorize the regulations. And disciplinary hearings on well drillers licenses. Like if somebody has the state says, well, you did something wrong, and they say, well, no, I didn't. It's kind of the responsibility of the advisory board to look at that and go, well, this was the situation, so was it wrong, was it not, whatever. And there's usually 3 board members present in a meeting, and then there's 2 alternates, so 5 total. And one of the concerns that I have is 2 of these positions are held by people that aren't Nevada residents. One's from Utah and one's from Arizona, and I'm not saying anything about these gentlemen. I don't know either one of them. I wouldn't know them to look at. But something like this kind of seems to me like it ought to be held for Nevada residents. I mean, I'm sure maybe there is and maybe there's not, but I'm pretty sure there's policies in place in just about every state agency that says if you're going to work for this agency, you must be a Nevada resident, unless you're, contractor or something like that. And even as contractors, you have employment preferences. You have to, if you're working in the state of Nevada, you have to give employment preference to Nevada residents. And then usually to whatever county you're working in also, you have to give preference to that county. So that's just a concern that I have and something I wanted to throw out since I got your ear right.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Don't know the answer. Not sure if those are appointed positions by folks in higher power than, say, me, but I'll ask that question. I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I do appreciate the concern.
And well, maybe too, that those were the only applicants there was at the time. I mean, I don't know that, and maybe that was the case.
Well, and that could be, it could be based on interest, but yeah, we just checked that real quick. Those are appointed by the state engineer. So for the record, I didn't appoint them, but
well, yeah.
I'll take a look into that though. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Trent. Other comments? Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. It is greatly appreciated, and we would invite you to make a habit of it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're not getting up and leaving, right? There's a few things on here we'd like to listen to.
That's great.
And yeah, I'm happy to come to more meetings. I'm
Yeah.
really trying to be seen. So
Okay.
yeah, you'll see
Zoom
me
is
again.
good. Zoom is good too. So,
Perfect.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving to item number 7. This is a report from CNRWA's Legislative Working Group and possible recommendations for the Nevada Legislature's Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Norm is the chair of the Legislative Working Group. I'll turn this over to Norm or to Jeff, either one. Don't fight.
On the day of our last legislative committee working group, I had to go to Carson City, and I came back under the influence of fentanyl.
It was on here somewhere? On the elephant.
So
Fentanyl?
I was not much of a participant, in any meaningful way, I may have said something. But Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you because you handled it so well.
We're all speechless, Norm.
Well, I wasn't under the influence. Can you put whoever's not on mute and speaking?
Who, can you all put your phones on mute,
Well, I
please?
think we found it.
Okay.
Again, the legislative, CNRWA legislative working group, we met last on April 6th. This would be our second meeting of the year.
Close a door.
And this is an open invitation for CNRWA board members to participate. You don't have to, I mean, if you're interested, just let me know. And we've actually grown the group quite a bit from, I think, the previous couple of years. Our meeting on April 6th, and we try to keep these meetings to an hour, at least for now, and then as things ramp up over time, they may be more frequent, likely will be, especially during the legislative session when things are happening very quickly. We may need to organize a get-together, almost on a moment's notice. And no decisions are made. These are just discussions, points of view. The board has the final say about any formal recommendations.
The full board.
Full board, that
Yeah.
is. So at our last meeting, we just talked about the same thing we talked about earlier, and that is the change in leadership at DCNR and the Nevada Division of Water Resources. I provided an update on the various sort of working groups that are meeting that we are aware of during this interim, and that includes formally the legislature's Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources. They've met 3 times so far. They will be meeting in June. They meet monthly from now until June, and then they'll have a work session sometime in August or September. We understand at the June meeting is when that interim committee will be hearing presentations on water issues. Following that meeting, at the end of June, June 30th, there will be a deadline for, and it's already out, a sort of solicitation of recommendations for actions to be taken or considered to be taken by the Joint Interim Committee. That would be bill draft requests, potentially submit a recommendation for a resolution, for a bill, for, a letter, all kinds of things. But I think that committee has 10 BDRs, but that's not just for water, that's for a whole range of all kinds of natural resource issues. But I anticipate being asked to do a presentation on CNRWA at that meeting. In addition, the Public Lands Committee is meeting. Public Lands, until about 4 years ago, was a standalone interim committee and a very important committee because there wasn't a joint interim standing committee on natural resources. So the Public Lands Committee had a much larger scope. I mean, they still do, but they covered a lot of these other issues. And it was a pretty large committee, and they traveled around the state. And I know that oftentimes we'd bump into each other back in Washington, D.C., where they would go back and meet with our congressional delegation. Well, in the previous 2 legislative sessions, the Public Lands Committee was a subcommittee of this Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources. This interim, they're back as a standalone committee. They will also be having a hearing on May 15th in Winnemucca, and I've been asked to do a presentation at that meeting on CNRWA and Humboldt River Basin Water Authority activities. They may ask, as they typically do, what is it that we can help you with? I don't know that, and we can have a discussion about that maybe in a couple minutes. So those are the 2 formal committees. In addition, the Nevada Water Law Working Group is an informal ad hoc committee that really, I think, really galvanized and coalesced around the water rights retirement omnibus bill last session, and included a variety of different representation from a range of stakeholders. The Nature Conservancy this year is a member of this group. Most of the environmental and conservation organizations, Nevada Mining is represented, Great Basin Water Network, the Division of Water Resources is I guess more of a observer, if you will. They have their own rules and regulations in terms of how they do their BDRs. Southern Nevada Water Authority, Truckee Meadows Water Authority, Chris Mahana is involved. Jake is on that. So it's a large group. And as I mentioned last interim, that group was responsible for putting together Assembly Bill 104, and sort of the same. It's a mirror bill of Senate Bill 36, but AB 104, the main component of that was water rights retirement, and then there were some other recommendations or things in there that were needed by the Southern Nevada Water Authority for their water conservation program, things like septic tank conversions and those kinds of things. And then I think NDEP had some provisions or some changes in there. All in all, the sort of the principles of that bill back then and sort of going forward now with this new group is, one, we want to tackle issues, but we don't want to tackle issues that we know are just going to be such an uphill battle that we'll never be able to get anything accomplished, and all we'll do is just create more animosity and hostility and controversy. And so even if it's a difficult issue, we want to try to narrow it so that it's something that we think we can get consensus on. We're not going to make any fundamental recommendations for fundamental changes to Nevada water law, but it's much more around the edges and administration and maybe a little bit more clarity, but no changes to the fundamental doctrines of Nevada water law or authorities of the state engineer or anything like that. That group is meeting, and so far we've been focusing on we've talked about a whole bunch of issues. We've talked primarily about figuring out a way to fund the water rights retirement program, because those two bills that were enacted last session did not include funding. So now we're trying to find mechanisms to fund the water rights retirement program. There is discussion about conjunctive management that I've been leading, and that is a whole topic in and of itself. And initially, I was most interested in making sure that 3M plans, the state engineer could require a 3M plan for a change application in addition to an application for a new appropriation, and also put a little bit more, and Joe, you may not like hearing this, but you already have, I guess, and that is putting a little bit more of the responsibility for making sure that the counties can be a participant in the 3M plan on the state engineer, and not making that something that the county has to track. Beyond that, I'm not sure how far we're going to get in terms of sort of defining what a 3M plan looks like, when it's used, when it's not used. We're still having those discussions. There's been discussion about extensions of time, but Joe has already covered those. And then I know that vested claims will be a hot topic. There was a bill last session proposed by the Division of Water Resources, or maybe it was DCNR, but it basically was pretty simple language, and that was to exempt the federal government from having to file a claim for a vested right by the statutory deadline of December 31st, 2027. Everybody else in the state has to meet that deadline. And the reason that language was proposed is because the federal government is, I guess, in the background, and there's concern that they would sue the state engineer for having to comply or would not comply, and it would create a whole bunch of legal problems. And there's some case law in Oregon, and then we've got the Baker case hanging out there as well. So there's just a lot of issues there. But fundamentally, I think most people understood that we don't want to get into a protracted battle with the federal government. On the other hand, there are a lot of folks who believe that this just isn't fair, that everybody else in the state that has a claim for a vested water right has to meet a statutory deadline, but not the federal government. And so, I'm not sure where we're going to end up on that. I think the state engineer's office will have a lot of influence in how that moves forward. But I know the Farm Bureau is leading the case, the cause to not have that language, and so we're kind of talking about how we might be able to address that topic. And then with regard to water rights retirement, there's another issue that Jake Tibbetts brought up. And I don't know, Jake, if you want to talk about that or just let me give it an overview. But basically what we realized in retrospect here, and hopefully the folks that did retire their water rights were aware of this going into it, and that is that if they retired a water right, whether it's under our program or just retired a water right, outside of the program, and they are no longer using that land for ag in some way, shape, or form, and that sort of the parameters there, I'm not exactly clear what those are, but they would no longer have a tax deferment for ag. And I guess that's one thing, but then the bigger concern is that there may be a clawback of those years, maybe going back as far as 7 years for that abated or that tax deferment. So we want to get that straightened out because obviously going forward, and of course we did CNRWA and HRVWA retire water rights. So we want to make sure we get that clarified and certainly make it clear going forward, one way or the other, whatever the group decides. But I think that, what I'm hearing is let's just figure out a way to keep that ag deferment if the water right is retired and it's not being used in ag the way it was before. And so those are the issues that haven't been brought up that I'm really not pursuing that have been pursued in the past are the basin assessments. I think maybe you want me to, and I'm happy to, but there's just only so much, we can do. But I'm happy to bring that forward if that's what the board wants me to do. And then the groundwater boards, because there's a whole lot of other stuff going on with local groundwater involvement in things. So I think that's pretty much the list of what we're talking about in our group. There is a governor's office working group looking specifically at efficiencies and addressing some of the issues that Joe talked about, trying to address backlogs, making things, run more smoothly, more timely. I'm not sure what the final, recommendations will be out of that group. And then there is other stakeholder working groups that, are probably meeting on their own, but one of them, a pretty big importance, is the Humboldt River Stakeholder Working Group that was meeting, may be back on, we're not sure. Those are discussions taking place, but that's a pretty significant working group that's going to focus exclusively on the Humboldt region, and there may be some things that are recommended in that, out of that working group for the Humboldt that may have application elsewhere in the state, primarily in a conjunctive management situation. And the other things that we talked about at the working group meeting are data centers. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And we're also hearing that there may be some interest in bringing back the non-consumptive use bill from last session, AB 109. Was it 109? I think, where the bill was to require all applications for an appropriation of water, even if they're non-consumptive, to have to go through the state engineer's office. And basically that means we're talking about any closed loop geothermal systems where they're claimed to be non-consumptive, and potentially direct lithium exchange projects where, again, if it's being considered a non-consumptive use, then we think, or people think, that there ought to be the same requirement for non-consumptive use as there is for consumptive use, because impacts can occur just by turning on the pumps. It doesn't matter if the water is actually returned to the aquifer or whatever. And so we're not sure who's going to bring that or if it's even going to be brought, but we're hearing some rumblings about that. In fact, there was a hearing on that whole issue. I think it was the very first Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources. And then data centers, again, that's something the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources met about in March. They had a joint meeting with the Growth and Infrastructure Committee, and it was all day long data centers and an hour and a half of public comment even before the meeting started. So it's a hot topic. So that's it. And I guess it is listed as an action item only because if there is something that I missed on here or you haven't heard and you think CNRWA would want to consider having something go forward on this authority's behalf, I need to know, I mean, it doesn't have to be today, but, to the extent that I'll be doing a presentation probably before our next meeting, it'd be good to know, I guess.
Where did we leave off on the basin assessments?
Great question. So
That's kind of a hot button.
it is, and I think the third, last session would have been the third session or second session. We asked for a bill to do something with basin assessments. It actually made it on the BDR recommendation list from the last Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources, the last interim, but it was combined with an appropriation request for the division, which I think you guys are still mad at me for asking that to be taken out, but.
That was before his time,
Yeah,
so
but anyway, and
you're off the hook.
And for those on the call or others that are new to this, the basin assessments are what the state engineer has authority to levy or tell the county to levy, more correctly, order the county to do, in order to do special work related to
Adjudicating the basin.
not adjudicating it. No, it's for special administration of that
Okay.
basin. So it could be special projects, the basin engineer, it could be doing a groundwater study, it could be doing any one of a number of things.
For specific reasons.
Yes, related to that,
Yeah.
to those basins, those designated basins. Well, for 2 sessions previous to the last one, so 25, 23, and 21, the governor's office saw fit to recommend that those basin assessments be used in the Division of Water Resources budget to supplant state general fund dollars.
Yeah, slush fund.
Basically, just sweeping that account and moving it
Yeah.
in to fund for what we believed were positions and other activities that may have had a tangential relationship to the basins, but were more overhead and administration, but not.
Which was not the legislative intent.
We don't believe that was the intent. And so we worked very closely with the division and the department. And last session, we actually had an agreement. However, it was at the very final days of the deadline for passage out of the first committee, and we just couldn't get it done in time. I mean, it was literally right up to the deadline, and the chair of the committee offered to work with me over the interim to do something. And so I guess really, to answer your question, yeah, we had agreement, and it really depends on whether or not the division is still interested in pursuing that or sort of working on that or agreeing to that. If that's the case, and I know there's a couple of other issues have come up since then that would need to be addressed, but if the division and the department were willing to agree to that language with some modifications and not attach a fiscal note to it, I think we'd have a pretty good chance of getting that enacted, or at least passed. So, not to put you on the spot, and I know you're not going to answer now, but the question came up, so I guess it's a topic of discussion.
Jeff, one other thing. I don't know if this is the time to bring it up, but an idea was brought forth and shared with both you and I recently about substituting maybe greenhouses for some alfalfa grows. Do you want to?
Yeah. So I think I saw Tyson Falk on this call. One of the issues that, you know, the working group that I'm involved with, and probably others, and I know this is some, you know, top of the mind for Division of Water Resources and has been, is how to get around the requirement to put your water to beneficial use, and not incur, run afoul of that requirement, which means that there's no incentive to conserve water. I mean, that's the corollary of that, right? And I mean, we've had lots of discussion by lots of people, and many of whom are a lot smarter than me, most of, if not all of them, and understand this, like, Mr. Frey was saying, on the ground, how that actually works or doesn't work. But the fact of the matter is, it still remains that, the beneficial use requirement really drives all of this. And until there's a way that we can come up with language that would guarantee, number one, that we're still, that water right holders are complying with the beneficial use, but then we're not opening it up for potential abuse, or, circumvention, and speculation and all those things that we worry about, it's just really difficult. And there were a couple of bills last session that actually came out of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources to try to address that. Simple stuff, what I thought was simple was like extending the period of time from 3 years to 5 years, or 10 years, but 5 years maybe even, for allowing water to be used for environmental purposes. Discussion about that. There have been proposals in the past about retiring a portion of your water rights. You can not put your water rights to use for a period of time and conserve amount of water, and then for like every acre foot of duty that you conserve, the state gets a portion of that to relinquish. You get to keep the other part. All kinds of different sort of ideas, but nothing ever could get moved. So thinking along those lines, I know Tyson has been talking to folks about an idea that would basically allow somewhat of that, or at least to be able to conserve water, and maybe the water right holder gives up a portion of that. But the idea is, by reducing your duty and demand, you're able to still grow crops, and maybe they're different crops, and maybe they're crops that are grown in a greenhouse, and maybe there's a different way to do business. Because I don't know what the records would indicate, and maybe Joe, you know this off the top of your head, but I mean, how much duty of, how much water is being pumped relative to how much, an irrigator's duty really is. And, while we want to retire wet water, we also, I think, are very interested in making sure that we don't keep these water rights on the books, right? Because if everybody all of a sudden decides to start pumping at their full duty, I mean, we think we've got problems now, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And so that's kind of the concept. Anyway, I think it's still being discussed.
Okay, great, thanks. Norm or Jake, is there anything, well, you were under the influence of fentanyl, so.
I'd still like to hear his
You're-
perspective. Just say
It was
no.
a heck of a day.
Just say no.
I did the next day.
Jake, is there anything you have to add? Is he there?
Yeah, he's on there.
Yeah, there he is.
I guess that's a no.
Okay. All right. Are we finished with this item?
Yes.
Let's move to item number 8. This is a discussion and possible action to approve a CNRWA policy statement on data centers. It's in your backup. I hope everybody took time to read that. Jeff, you did a great job.
Thank you. Just, this was sent out, I think, for our January meeting as a draft. And since even January, I mean, if you stay abreast of the news, you'll see that this is an issue not only in Nevada, but pretty much everywhere. As I mentioned, there was a meeting, an interim committee meeting in March to talk about data centers. Lots of issues, lots of concerns. This is something that I think the working group that I'm involved with, and Laurel and others, are sort of taking a wait-and-see approach in terms of what the group might want to do. But I would say, And by the way, attached to this is the Legislative Council Bureau, the nonpartisan research sort of arm of the legislature, put together that highlights a lot of the issues that are in this, this position statement. And I just want to make clear that this policy, just like any other Central Nevada Regional Water Authority draft policy, is only about the water, not about the merits of data centers, about energy. I mean, it's slightly about energy because it involves using water, but it's not about the merits of data centers, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, or whether you should support them or not. This is just about the water aspect of this and impacts. I think that we're going to continue to see more interest in data centers, despite maybe some of the pushback that we're seeing. And I think that a lot of that might spill into the rural counties because, that's where a lot of this stuff sometimes ends up. And so, anyway, that's pretty much it. And I would say that of all the things that are in here, probably the most important is the very top statement, because that is what I'm seeing and reading and hearing about the most, which is the transparency in terms of what the actual consumptive use of water by these data centers really is. And that's not just the water to cool the equipment, but also the water that's needed, any water that's needed to produce the energy, to produce the energy to power those data centers. And there's actually a third component, but it doesn't really necessarily, at least at this point, affect Nevada, and that is there's water used to produce those chips, to wash those chips. And I don't know if there's any chip manufacturing industries in Nevada, but that is a sort of on a larger scale, people that are looking at that as well. So anyway, the rest of it is pretty straightforward. There are some indices, including the water usage effectiveness, that would help gauge water and energy use. And ultimately, I think a lot of this ends up at the county anyway through special use permits, possibly through approvals to connect to water systems. There may be those who are going to look at either leasing or purchasing water rights from others to serve these centers. And the other thing that's really important to recognize is that while there are technologies that allow less consumptive use, I guess the question is still, although Google, I think, has said that their data center is 100% non-consumptive. I'm not sure if that's true or if I remember that correctly, but there are technologies where you can minimize the consumptive water use, but when you reduce consumptive water use, you increase the energy demand and vice versa. So it's really a trade-off, and again, those are all things that are more or less, we hopefully captured in this policy statement.
Jeff, are you want a motion on this? Is there a motion?
Could I
Yeah, Laurel.
Could I just ask a question, Jeff, about this? This is Laurel Saito with the Nature Conservancy. I'm just wondering on here if you would want to also know the source of the water. So you say account for the water use, like making, specifying how much water they're going to use, but I don't see in here explicitly saying where the water is going to come from. And it seems
Yeah,
like
that's a
that
great
would be
point.
That should be in there. I
An
agree. That's fine.
important-
That is a very good point.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Mancebo. Your mic is off. It's flashing red, so why don't you pull that one over? You're on. It's good.
Oh, okay. I would make that motion with that addition that
Okay.
you stated.
Yeah, Commissioner Mancebo's motion was to approve the policy statement with the addition of Laurel Saito's information. Is there a second?
Second from Norm Frey.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Chair?
Yes, absolutely.
Nye County Commissioner Strickland here. We approved within the last couple months a really interesting project that is like imagine a solar project that had data centers connected to it, but those data centers were just small little houses. Like imagine, and the solar is not even hooked up to the transmission lines. They use no water, and they are just a really small little house with each throughout the project. Very interesting. Chair Eastley, that is 25 miles north of Beatty. And we're pretty excited about the prospects of this because there's no water source.
Wow, that's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment also, and hate to drag it out, but the source of the water is very important. The source of water may occur in another county, and the downstream people, for instance, if Lyon County is taking up the issue of data centers and placing them, but it could have a great effect on Churchill County's water resources. And so while those portions on those river systems of the Truckee and the Carson are not, we've already got 2 data centers. And when they went in, they were very elusive on their water source and the water quantity of water. You ask them a direct question, they just, well, we're not like everybody else. It's like a restaurant, but not all restaurants are the same. And it's true, but those of us that are downstream are very concerned because what we're building is, and I'm addressing you, Joe, what we're building here is another problem like the Humboldt River, where you have a farmer out here who is relatively inexperienced in water issues, and all of a sudden we're battling a big entity, Newmont, Barrick, and I've seen articles on the state engineer's replacement and things like that related to those mines. But I don't want to fight Google, Meta, Microsoft. If you have a monitoring and mitigation program for those, and you tell them to go buy all the farms in the Newlands Reclamation Project, they'll go buy all the farms in the Newland Reclamation Project and won't bat an eye. What does the community do? It kills a community. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. And Commissioner Strickland and I were talking this morning and agreed that it might be a great idea for those of you who are county commissioners around this, within the CNRWA organization, to take this policy statement back to your board and to also have your counties adopt either this statement or something similar that would, you can tailor it for use in your county. We think that would be helpful.
I would offer a friendly amendment that if it passes, that we send that to the counties with a recommendation to get a local.
Yeah.
If we do it all at one time, it gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and providing a template is helpful to them. Yeah. Will the motion maker accept that amendment? Yes. Yeah, can you say that on the record? Yeah. Now you're off. Now you're on.
Okay.
You'll accept
Yes,
that?
yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Norm, did you second officially?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. Yeah. All right, any other discussion on this item or questions concerning the motion? Is there any opposition to the motion? With no opposition, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Yes, that is exactly what I was going to recommend. We're going to take a slight detour on the agenda. I want to save the discussion on the 3M plan because that might go a little long. And we're going to move to item 10. This is a presentation on water education and emerging issues by Daniel Rothberg, a master's student, environmental science and policy with UC Davis. And Daniel, the floor is yours and welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Daniel,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, and I'll do an introduction while you're
sharing your screen, and hopefully that works. So some of you may know Daniel. He is an environmental reporter, writer. He worked for many years as an environmental reporter for the Nevada Independent. Covered a lot of environmental and water issues. Before that, he was with the Las Vegas Sun. And he's currently writing a book. I don't know what the title of that book is, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's about water in the West and the Great Basin, but focusing on Nevada. He also currently writes a Substack called Invisible Waters, and he is currently based in, I guess, Davis or Sacramento area. He's pursuing his master's degree in environmental science and policy, but he is still very much engaged in water issues in Nevada, reports on them again through a Substack. And Daniel gave a presentation to this board a couple of years ago, I think before he left for his master's program, about sort of education and providing information on water issues to the public, because they're very sometimes difficult and technical. So anyway, with that, Daniel, any luck sharing your screen?
Can you see my screen
No.
at all? Thank you for the introduction, Jeff.
No, sure. No, not yet.
Okay.
And if not,
Let
we've
me
got it here.
Let me try again. I had some speaker notes, but I think I may just ditch that plan and wing it. Because I'm not sure how I can
Let
show them
me
both.
check over here to just make sure we. My default is to allow you to do share.
Okay. How is this looking?
Nothing yet.
You know, that might be because it's full. Hold on one sec.
Starting, but we're not seeing. You want to?
Okay, sorry about this.
Double click that.
Some technical issues. All right, let's
Do
see.
you want to try to double click that real quick?
Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, we got it.
Okay, great. All right, so am I good to go?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. Thanks for having me today. Jeff, as Jeff mentioned, I am a master's student at UC Davis, but prior to that, I worked for about a decade as a reporter for the Nevada Independent and other publications covering water and environmental issues. I recognize a lot of people on this call, but I want to just sort of introduce myself a little bit. As Jeff mentioned, I'm sort of in transition right now between journalism and doing some more academic research and kind of broader water education work. And I'm going to talk about both a little bit today, but a lot of my discussion today is really informed by the reporting and work that I did as a reporter. You know, I started covering water in Nevada when Jason King was state engineer. I interviewed Jason many times, and I learned a lot from him, from the people at the Division of Water Resources, and from doing interviews about water. A lot of different perspectives, and I think one of the challenges is how to kind of bring those perspectives together and think about water with competing values and interests and, you know, the layers of law, science, policy. In that time, I covered Las Vegas Pipeline was a really big issue when I first started covering water, Humboldt River Basin, Lower White River flow system, Truckee River, Walker River, Diamond Valley issues, and the Colorado River as well. So that just sort of to give a little bit of background of what is kind of informing my talk today. I also, as Jeff mentioned, have been working on a book project, which I'm hoping to have done this year with Island Press on some of that reporting. In terms of the research that I'm interested in, one of the biggest issues that I think I saw reporting, and one of the issues that was most interesting to me is kind of how information is used to make decisions about water, and including how the role of science in the decision-making process. So some of my sort of research questions have to do with, how people come together to solve collective water problems, and how science plays a role in this decision-making process. So in terms of that, I'm sort of just starting that journey in my transition from journalism. So I probably have more questions than answers when I get to that part of the presentation, but I did want to just mention that as well. So the three things that I'm hoping to talk about today is just sort of the water communication landscape, where water education could play a role in the policymaking process, in kind of communicating water both internally and externally in organizations, the role of science in decision-making processes, and coming up with policy solutions, the role of science in coming up with policy solutions, and then also just sort of some takeaways of what I've seen in terms of what can lead maybe out of conflict and into more collaborative governance, into kind of policy solutions that actually address these water issues. I think in framing that, one of the terms that I've heard discussed about water in the West is that we're constantly sort of muddling through these problems. I think I'm skeptical of solutions that provide easy answers to really complex problems, because these are sort of complex. These are definitely complex problems, which kind of leads me into my next slide. One of the terms that I like to use a lot, and is the name of my Substack that I write, is Invisible Waters. To me, one of the reasons that water communication is so important, water education is so important, is because how we interact with water is really often hidden. And I mean that both in terms of our natural systems. If you think of groundwater, it's a blind resource. It's invisible to a lot of us unless we see sort of the discharge points, whether that's springs or, other wetlands, things like that. So there's this sort of the ecological invisibility of water. And then there's also sort of the invisibility of water in our regulated and our built systems, our engineered systems. We turn on the tap. A lot of people turn on the tap, probably not people in this room. I think people in this room are probably much more acquainted with where their water comes from. But we turn on the tap in a lot of places, and a lot of people turn on the tap and they don't really know where their water is coming from. And I think that is a big problem, given that, water is a public resource. And, I think data centers is a good example of that. We interact all the time with computers and AI and sort of the use of data centers. We don't always think about where that water is coming from. And then, as evident in just that discussion, water lends itself to these really complex systems, both in terms of the natural systems and in terms of the engineered systems. And so that results in some complex decision making. Some of the common themes that I've seen in my reporting and research is that, there's this really big, I think, historical weight to water in the West, especially given our prior appropriation system, which is first in time, first in right, and tethers our water rights to kind of the past use and the priority date of when they were established. So the history is really important, thinking about historical baggage in different places and historical uses of water. Over allocation presents itself differently in different places, but in many watersheds across the West, there are more rights to use water than there is water to go around. We, in some cases, assumed that our water sources were bigger than they were. And in other cases, we've seen changes in how much water we can rely on. There are legal and political realities that don't always align well with the science or the physical hydrologic realities. There are a lot of questions about how you cut back fairly and equitably. Public interest considerations are really important, not only the public trust doctrine, but also thinking about how the public interest is weighed in water rights applications. I also included here the human right to water. This is a big issue in California, but I think it's also a big issue globally. Just thinking about who has access to water and who doesn't, and who falls into different gaps. Domestic wells, water quality in domestic wells is one example I kind of think of. I need to hurry up here. So I just wanted to present this here. I think it's really important when thinking about how to communicate about water, to really think about when people tune in, when there's a window of opportunity to communicate, and also just sort of the natural way that lawmakers and decision makers sometimes think about water, and that's this hydrological cycle. I stole this from a paper that was published in 2004, but we cycle in the West between these extremes. Some people call weather whiplash. These extremes of flood years to really droughty, dry years. And I think our communication ecosystem follows that. We see panic after a drought, and then all of a sudden there's rain, and then there's apathy. We don't do much in terms of policy. Then there's a drought, there's awareness, and we switch back into sort of the doing mode. So that's just one thing to think about. I think a lot of whether it's on the kind of reporting side or even just some of the research questions that I'm interested in around governance, I think information plays a huge role. I include science and the application of science in decision making as information here, but I also think of information as just more just transparency about what's going on, the who, what, where, when, and why that we read about in the news. I think of water education as really broadly defined. I think of reporting the news as water education, and I think of more formal educational settings as water education. I'm really interested too in kind of external and internal communication, how information is shared within organizations and also outside of organizations. So again, I just put some things down here, but I also want to be aware that we're living in 2026. Why do we have so many data centers? Well, because the internet, social media, and so the way that information is shared is not only through, news stories, reporting that we might think of more traditionally in the print reporting world that I came up in, but also in TikToks, Reels, multimedia, visuals, and things like that. So that's something important to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about your audience and who you might want to communicate with. I wanted to share a quick case study here on that I was involved with over the summer, trying to design and deliver a water education course, working with the University of California Extension, UCANR. We developed the California Water Course. And the unique thing about the California Water Course was that it was an open source, open access course. It was hybrid. So we had people from all across the state, the Central Valley, Northern California. We had people from Southern California, Coastal California, Salinas, Watsonville area as well. And the way that the California Water Course worked is we ended up having about 80 participants, which was a lot more interest than we expected. We kind of designed the course for 25 or so students in the first cohort, but we had probably 3 times that. And the way it worked is we had participants pick a watershed that they were interested in California. Most people pick their local watershed, so that might be the Merced River or the Kern River or a particular basin within those watersheds. and we had them basically investigate the watershed to learn about the watershed. And the way that we did that was through kind of a mixed teaching approach. We had students fill out a water system self-assessment, which was basically a document that walked them through like 10 to 20, maybe even 30 steps of how to find information about their water system, and then how to use that information and actually apply it in whatever sector they were working in. And I should say we had the participants in this we had some producers, we had UC extension specialists, we had a lot of local decision makers, water agency folks, and we also had some community activists as well. The focus areas for those modules were kind of built in ecological systems, so looking at the natural water cycle and also looking at kind of the built systems, policy, how water policy worked, and then water budgeting. And then the last one was engagement, how you would take all that information and actually develop a public comment letter or a protest or something like that to actually engage in the process in your local watershed. So this is just a little bit more about that pedagogy, but we developed guidebook materials, videos. I was not involved in the video part, but we did these water system self-assessments, and there was also an experiential and participatory learning part involved, with students actually coming to UC Davis and touring groundwater wells and things like that. The reason I mention this is because I think this kind of course, being open access, is really scalable. It's something I could definitely see happening in Nevada. I want to be really respectful of time, so I'm going to just quickly go through the rest of my slides. I wanted to just mention this because I just hearing the discussion today, I was thinking about it as well. One of the big questions I think about is what sort of pushes policy forward. I think one of the observations, just talking to former state engineers, even state engineers before Jason, the system in Nevada and in most places in the West is very conflict driven. And I don't mean that in a conflict is good or a conflict is bad sort of way. I mean that in a people move in response to conflict in a lot of cases. State regulators move in response to conflict in a lot of cases, or direction from legislators, but legislators also move in response to conflict in some cases. And so that's just sort of one observation in my reporting for the book, which is based off dozens and dozens of interviews and kind of extensive documentary research. I came across this quote from Elwood Mead, who went on to be the commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation. This is his description of the situation in Nevada in 1903, before there was a water law or administrative water law. He wrote that litigation has been characterized by great cost and barrenness of results. Where a litigant has gained a certain volume of water by decree, he has had no means of protecting his right. The lesson of Nevada, as with other states, is the need for administrative control. So it just shows that even back then, there was this kind of interplay between the courts and the executive and the legislature. I think that kind of interplay and dynamic still exists today. I would add one more dynamic here, which is just the physical hydrology. I think going back to the hydrological cycle, the hydrologic conditions often dictate and push policy forward in many ways. And I think that's something we're seeing right now on the Colorado River. I think I'm going a tiny bit over time. Jeff, is it okay if I?
Yeah, I've got a few more minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I just have a couple more slides to just go into what I'm kind of focusing on now in sort of my research questions, which is how science and information is used in the decision-making process. I think one example of that is this question around stream flow depletion, which of course is from groundwater pumping, referred to sometimes, in the case of the Humboldt River and other places as capture. I am really interested in this question in part from my Nevada work, which has really focused on how groundwater and surface water has been integrated and managed conjunctively. But this is an issue all across the West. This is a phenomenon we have known about, that groundwater wells could and do capture surface water. I'm using stream flow depletion here, but this can also refer to spring flow. This is a phenomenon that's been known about by Tice and other hydrogeologists since the 1940s and documented, but it's something that's really being integrated right now into management in a more serious way. California is grappling with this in implementing its Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And while we know that this is a phenomenon going on, we don't always know. Stream flow depletion is extremely difficult to measure and estimate. And so what scientific approaches we take ends up being really important in management. And so I'm really interested in kind of understanding how water managers apply different methods for evaluating stream flow depletion, and how that can be done effectively to produce results that can be applied to public policy. This is a really big issue and crosses kind of a lot of different values of water. Stream flow depletion can cause conflict between often junior groundwater users and senior surface water users. And it can cause threats to ecosystems, groundwater dependent ecosystems, freshwater species, and I think threats to long-term water access. So some of the questions that I think are interesting here are kind of how you navigate the uncertainty in science and law, how you choose the right modeling approach, how science can ultimately inform policy selections, whether it's offsets and mitigation. I know you're about to talk about 3M plans, groundwater management programs, and then other questions that I think are important is sort of who is at the table in modeling efforts, and what is the process for updating models over time. I know in Idaho, where they have dealt with this issue on the Snake River, there's a working group that is actually involved in updating the models. And the model's been updated, I think 5 or 6 times. I'm not 100%. I have to check my notes to know 100%. And this is a really interesting issue to me too, because it really intersects with a lot of different aspects of governance. You have to balance regulations, policies, and laws with with financial resources available, in thinking about how you might want to model this issue, with expertise and training, and with some of the, how you actually want to use the science. This conceptual model was taken from a paper that looks at this sort of exact question, what types of models make sense for evaluating this issue. So my last slide is that my biggest takeaway in a lot of my reporting and research is that there's solutions out there. I've seen a lot of solutions, but they're often distributed. They're not necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution, and there are big trade-offs to the solutions as well. Water is not a win-win. Is not a win-win. I think I heard John Ensminger say that once from the Southern Nevada Water Authority. But water is not necessarily a win-win business. And what works in one place might not work in another place. I think it's important to leave room for local solutions. Common patterns that I've seen in successful policies, leadership, which often means making hard decisions that are unpopular with at least a segment of the constituency, clear goals, accountability, transparency. I would also add there, local buy-in is really important. One of the observations, and I think this is playing out right now in the Colorado River, is that leverage exists within different places in the system. You can definitely have a situation where there's sort of an anti-commons phenomenon where there, it only takes one water user to sort of blow up a one or two water users to veto an entire solution. In that sense, power can be distributed widely, but the risk is not always distributed in the same way. Sometimes people have more power, but don't necessarily have the same risk with prior appropriation. And my last thing is that it's important to kind of consider the information that's necessary for a solution early and often, and to constantly be going back and kind of revisiting it. And so that is all I have. And I am, my email's there, my LinkedIn's there. Please feel free to connect. And I am happy to answer any questions if there's a couple minutes.
Yes, I can think we can take a couple minutes for questions. Any questions for Dan? Dan, that was really interesting. We're glad you joined us to join us again, and we hope you'll be able to do that in the future.
Thanks, I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. One more opportunity for questions. No? All right, thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Dan.
Thanks.
Jeff, do you want to move back to?
Yeah, I think we have time.
All right, we're going to go back to item number 9. This is a discussion on 3M plans.
And Tara, are you able to bring that up? There you go. Perfect. Great, thank you. So you've probably heard for folks who may not be familiar with what a 3M plan is, it's monitoring, management, mitigation. There's a long history of what monitoring, management, and mitigation is, and it's not just used for water resources, it's used for all kinds of resources, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But it's becoming more recognized as a tool for water management, especially in the state of Nevada. And there, like I said, there is existing authority for the state engineer to require a monitoring, management, mitigation plan in Nevada revised statute. And we'll get into that as well and what that means. And so I guess we'll go to the next slide. Oh, thank you. So what is a monitoring, management, mitigation plan? In its most general sense, I guess, a three-pronged approach. It's monitoring, that is observing the status of something. Management, active stewardship, mitigation, reducing or offsetting harm for the protection of natural resources. And again, this is used for different natural resources, including water. Can be used for wildfire, can be used for air, for any natural resource. And these actions are often integrated into an adaptive management framework, which basically uses the data to adjust actions, keep going over them as you have more monitoring data to achieve long-term sustainability and prevent the loss of ecological functions. Next slide, please. So I guess that raises the question, well, is a 3M plan the same as adaptive management? And you may have heard that terminology as well. They're not exactly the same, but adaptive management can be a core component of a 3M plan. And so, again, a 3M plan is a specific set of actions, whether that's installing monitoring wells and protocols, how you would monitor those monitoring wells, how often, how they're reported, those sorts of things. So actions, protocols for a given project or situation. And then adaptive management is a dynamic scientific approach to managing systems where outcomes are uncertain. So 3M plans are based on the premise that you understand, at least initially, where there are concerns and not concerns. This is really more to, at least in the sense of a 3M plan for water rights is to monitor and see if there are outcomes that you haven't predicted, at least initially. And so if there is, then there's a plan in place which requires certain actions, certain adjustments based upon the monitoring and other data. Whereas adaptive management really provides the framework for how you adjust your management mitigation. It's more dynamic. This is done over time. Again, it's based on monitoring, whether that monitoring is continuous, whether it's annual, those kinds of things. And then, so the idea here is a comprehensive 3M plan for water resources will basically incorporate the principles of adaptive management to assure that ultimately it's effective and can assure long-term success. So these are when you could expect to see a 3M plan be required, and we'll start with FLTMA, which folks may recognize as the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, and that under FLTMA, it authorizes and actually requires, in this case, in most cases, at least in Nevada, BLM, and we'll kind of just focus on BLM because that's where a lot of these 3M plans are being, that's who's requiring a lot of these 3M plans and is the largest landowner in the state. But anyway, so FLTMA requires BLM to implement a 3M plan measures to ensure public lands are managed for multiple use, number one, and to prevent any unnecessary or undue degradation of those public lands. And FLTMA is foundational because it does give the BLM and Department of Interior the broad goals, but it's foundational because the specific requirements for 3M plan then are enforced through, for example, BLM regs, maybe even hand or guidances, and then through their resource management plans, and lastly through site-specific projects. So if a mining company or any other large or any other project that is situated on BLM that would necessitate a NEPA process and an EIS, then that's the foundational statute for that. So then you move on to NEPA and specifically an EIS. And so, again, the situation where you might have a mine on a BLM land, and in almost all cases, unless it's just a small expansion or a plan of operation or something, it's probably going to require an EIS, and a 3M plan could be a condition of a finding of no significant impact in that EIS. And I quoted the words enforceable, but when I brought that up to our stakeholder working group earlier this week, I was told that courts aren't enforcing or don't enforce this, and I guess that's an area that I'd like to explore more, because my understanding of how the NEPA process works is if there's a FONSI, but within the EIS, it's conditional on certain requirements being met, including 3M plan, then somehow that's supposed to be enforced, but I'll clarify that or get that clarified. So that's for the federal government, that's for NEPA, that's where we see a lot of, initially see these issues arise is during the NEPA process. But for the state, it's could be a condition of appropriating water for beneficial use under NRS 533-3531. It's not required in all cases, and it's at the discretion of the state engineer. And I have not gone back and done any kind of analysis, and I probably should have brought this up with the state engineer, but to see how often these monitoring 3M plans are being required. I mean, I think legislative record would indicate they're being required, for very complex types of projects and large projects. But again, I don't have specific information. And then lastly, a 3M plan most likely would be required by the state engineer if there is an application for an interbasin transfer of water, and that would be to satisfy the requirement that, or demonstrate that that interbasin water transfer is environmentally sound, and that's pursuant to NRS 5533703C. So how are 3 plans used? Again, there's a distinction between how they're used by the federal government and NEPA and how they're used by the state engineer for NEPA. Mitigation is a mandatory sequential framework to reduce environmental impacts. Again, NEPA is about informing, and a NEPA could, or finding of no significant impact could be approved even if there is a conflict with a water right. And that's where we think that mitigation could or should be required and should be enforced. But anyway, their hierarchy for dealing with the conflict under NEPA, or the NEPA statute, starts with avoidance. You avoid it first. If you can't avoid it, you minimize it. If you can't minimize it, there's some sort of level of compensation for how what that impact or the harm would be. Now, for under state law, NRS 533.370.2, if there's a proposed use or change of water right conflicts with an existing right or with a protectable interest in domestic wells, or threatens to prove detrimental to the public interest, the state engineer shall reject the application and refuse to issue the requested permit. So if there's an application for an appropriation for new water or for a change of an existing right, and there is a conflict as determined by the state engineer, and that conflict could be identified up front, maybe through the NEPA process, and they come back and apply for an application, or during a protest, someone could raise the issue of a conflict, or the state engineer's office or Division of Water Resources could identify a conflict in their review of the application. The state engineer is prohibited from approving that application. Now, that means, what we believe it means is that you cannot approve a 3M plan as a condition of approving an application where there is an existing or a known conflict. So that's the difference, and it's an important distinction. So why are 3M plans important for counties? Their 3M plans can place a burden on an existing water right holder or domestic well owner who, if they were in a situation where there is a known or even an unknown or unforeseen conflict that arises later, and they are looking for some relief to that, or some way to compensate for the conflict or their harm, they may need to spend significant time and money to participate or provide input to a 3M plan. And that's important. So that may be for an individual water right holder, or it could be for an entire basin or a community. And oftentimes that's where some of these 3M plans are, what they're developed for is potential impacts to not just a few ranchers or farmers, but to larger groups of individuals, including domestic well owners. And lastly, I couldn't resist, I found this in the legislative history from none other than Mr. Frey. I think this was testimony that he provided on a hearing, in a hearing on Assembly Bill 298 in 2017 session, which was a plan for sort of holistically or comprehensively addressing 3M requirements that was brought by the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and this was particular. This was I know CNRWA testified in opposition to that bill and raised some questions, and this was the email from Mr. Frey. If he cares to read it, if not, I can read it, but or maybe you remember this, but I think this is exactly what we're talking about. That is, most individuals who own water and most communities in the state do not have the resources, including knowledge, to negotiate a 3M plan that would adequately protect themselves from the loss of their water resources. So what role do counties have in 3M plans?
That sounds strange to me for a guy that can't get his mustache on straight in the morning.
Well, it stood the test of time. That's all I can say. For those of you who are county commissioners or represent county governments, you're probably aware that NEPA allows, or I guess at this point, addresses cooperating agencies' status to help the lead agency, which again, in most cases in Nevada is going to be the BLM. Helps, so the cooperating agency helps the federal lead agency by identifying local issues, providing data, developing alternatives for the environmental impact statement. So it's the ground floor, it's the scoping, it's from the very beginning of the NEPA process is what gives the counties and other cooperating agencies the ability to really get into the weeds, quite frankly, in the development of the NEPA document. So it provides early participation in scoping, all of the data, oftentimes, even after the recorded decision on an EIS by the agency, you still can't access the groundwater model or the data in some instances. And then that application goes to the Division of Water Resources for a water right. And groups like ours and individual water right owners are left to try to figure out what's in it. I mean, what are the details? How are these findings made? It also allows the county to work on alternatives. And more importantly, it really, I think, just is overall important for the process and collaboration. So, under 40 CFR, which are the regulations that carry out the NEPA requirements, cooperating agencies with jurisdiction by law. So if you're a county, you're a cooperating agency, and you object to a proposed action based on environmental impact, you have certain requirements or things that you need to do to specify that mitigation measure and actually get involved in figuring out what that mitigation looks like and put that in writing. And so a couple of things. One, if your county has been in the cooperating agency role, or if you haven't, it's a pretty big commitment. There's a lot to it. There is, time, staff resources, not a whole big financial commitment, but certainly the time and commitment to seeing these through. These are mostly long-term projects, although there are streamlined EISs now being done that certainly shorten the time frame, and to some extent maybe the effort that would be required. But this is really where the county has the most leverage, quite frankly, in terms of making sure that whatever is being done, the county can represent their constituents in terms of, going through that hierarchy of avoidance, mitigation, and compensation. Also, there are some provisions around EISs, and I know that Jake Tibbetts was instrumental in getting some relief from this about confidentiality that the counties would have in both participating and official actions taken by a county during the NEPA process that, I guess, for the most part, have always been viewed, at least in Nevada, as a public record, but yet you're held to a confidentiality requirement under NEPA. So those things, I think, have been worked out to some extent. And there has been some changes in the law. I can tell you that as of February 23rd, counties are still, at least in the Department of Interior revised regulations that were issued on February 23rd, recognized as cooperating agencies by law, I believe. But they are recognized as a cooperating agency. However, there's still, I guess, concern about whether or not, or how at least the Department of Interior, and by extension, the BLM, and other agencies would consider local governments. In other words, if a local government is interested in being a cooperating agency and identified as such by the BLM, does the BLM have to accept them as a cooperating agency? And so there's a bill going through Congress. I think it's called the Speed Bill or something, or the Speed Act. It's HR 478. I understand that it passed the House. It's sitting in the Senate, and I know Jake Tibbetts has been following this. But in any event, I think that at least in Nevada, I'd like to think that the BLM would always allow the county to be a cooperating agency in a project like that. I mean, I'm not the BLM, I can't speak for them, but the cooperation, I think, on that level is good that way. So, okay. So here's, on the state level, is where the counties would have a role potentially, and that is under NRS 533.365.1. And here is where really oftentimes the 3M plan is initiated. If it's not initiated for a NEPA process, or even if it isn't, this is where a county and even CNRWA would take a look at that, and that is during the process of public notice of an application for a water right. And basically that is after the during the period of when the application is submitted for publication, there's 30 days, and then there's another 30 days after that. So basically, once that that notice is sent for publication, counties would have 60 days. Those are the monthly reports that we see here, and we'll be going over here and going over in just a minute. If there's an application there that the county, or in this case CNRWA, sees that we have questions about, don't have information, go through the protocol, county can look at it, file a protest. That may or may not trigger a 3M plan, or at least you can put that in your protest letter, which is, we think we need a 3M plan here because of highly uncertain issues or something like that. And so that's where you would likely see that. And let's see, what else did I miss here? Cars management plan is condition of approving information use. I think yeah, so anyway, that's what covers and would give the county authority for a 3M plan. So what's in a 3M plan? You heard the state engineer talk about sort of not a lot of certainty around that, or at least uniformity around that. These are just things that I found in my research, as well as having worked on some of these 3M plans or working with counties on some of these 3M plans. Here's a list. There's some things in here. So I know that, trying to put this into statute or even regulation, people are concerned about this because there's some terminology in here that, and at least in water law, like most things, when you have terms that are vague or undefined or legally arguable or just whatever the case may be, you're never going to get anywhere. And so you look at some of these things, and terms like unreasonable effects of existing rights, where it says definitions of what shall constitute an unreasonable effects to existing rights. Well, what's an unreasonable effect? Nevada revised statute allows, for example, a reasonable lowering of the static water level. So what's a reasonable level, lowering? So it's kind of fraught with just all kinds of issues. But nonetheless, these are things that I think, for the most part, form the core of what a 3M plan should look like, which is, where the wells are, identifying, listing where those wells are, and how often they're going to be monitored, who's going to monitor them, what are the triggers, those kinds of things. I can tell you that for pretty much every mining project, large mining project or expansion that I've seen, especially in the Humboldt and CNRWA, there are annual reports. There is a pretty robust 3M plan for these projects with most of these, if not all of these elements, with some caveats, and I'll explain that in the next slide. And they report in a public meeting. It's pretty much a public meeting. I mean, I get invitations to those, and there's lots of data. Division of Water Resources staff go over all of this with the mining folks. They're hydrogeologists and technical people for hours. Question them about maybe an outlier and a data point, or just things that they haven't considered, that kind of thing. So anyway, they are, and they should be, pretty complete. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, and there are more sort of local plans that can be developed as well. So if you haven't already seen it, I think I included it in the packet. CNRWA did adopt a policy statement on 3M plans many years ago. Two things I want to point out in here, because I think there's still folks who don't either agree with this, and this is somewhat aspirational in terms of what we think they should be, but maybe not legally. I don't, that's still, I guess, open to debate. But anyway, first is that mitigation should not be forced on an existing water right owner or domestic well. At least by the state engineer, without at least the consent of that water right owner or domestic well owner who's being harmed. That's what we'll talk about in the next slide. Secondly, that a 3M plan should be used to ascertain, identify, and mitigate unknown or highly uncertain impacts. Again, not allowing a 3M plan to be used as a conditional approval for conditional approval of a water right with a known conflict. And the last one is probably the most important, and that is, I've not seen a 3M plan yet that includes as a mitigation measure stop pumping, cessation of pumping. And that's important because what else is there, if you're really creating a huge problem? I mean, maybe there are other things, but especially when whoever is creating that harm has invested lots of money into that project. So anyway, and my last slide is this. What are some of the mitigation measures? This is not an exhaustive list. This is just things that we have seen. Keep this in mind, that a water right, well, first of all waters in Nevada belong to the public. And all water rights in Nevada are usufructory rights. That means that the water right, because it's not owned by the water right holder, it's owned by the public. The water right owner has a legal right to use and profit from that water right, but it has to be put to beneficial use, right? It's a real property, but there's no, ownership of that right by the water right holder. So the mitigation, really is, well, if you don't own the water right and you don't own the molecules of a water right, then it doesn't matter if the mitigation basically makes you whole in a sense, and that is, if someone is capturing surface water, we'll use the conjunctive management example, then that surface water right holder needs to be given water at the same, same amount of water, same quantity at the same time. There are questions about whether that should include same equivalent quantity and same place. There's a lot of questions swirling around that, but the bottom line is the question of what leverage or what a water right owner or domestic well owner, what right they would have to either accept or reject, I should say, a compensation or mitigation of the harm that's being, that they're experiencing as a result of a conflict, is still an open question. So you can look at some of these things and, you know, for example, if you have a water well and you're an irrigator and that well is being harmed by, you know, a junior right, then, you know, is trucking water to your, you know, to your location an acceptable mitigation measure? Probably not. Some of these others might be, and it just depends on the specific circumstance and situation. And so, you know, I just think that it's important to recognize all of this. And again, I think 3M plans are becoming more and more used because, again, just increasing demand and diminishing resource. And so we're going to be, there's going to be, you know, a lot of effort in trying to maximize our limited water resources. And these are some of the things that I think are going to be tools that are going to be utilized to make that happen. So that's the end of the presentation. This is really meant to be informational, at least at this point, and to let you know, I'm still going to be pushing to try to at least get a couple of the administrative changes to the 3M statutes moving, and that is to make sure that they could apply to change applications, and also that it's the state engineer that would notify the county if a state engineer is requiring a 3M plan. Everything else beyond that is a work in progress and a pretty significant effort. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jeff on 3M plans?
This is Chris Wagenseller.
Your mic's off.
There we go. Chris Wagenseller, Esmeralda County. You listed as one of the mitigation measures connecting domestic wells to municipal water systems. How would that work?
Well, it would only work in areas where there's municipal,
there's a municipal
water service.
Okay. So taking water from a domestic well? Or?
No. So if there have been instances where you've got a cluster of, and this is more probably in the more suburban areas, not so much in the rural areas, because of zoning, you're allowed to have I think you can have a domestic well on, is it half an acre, quarter an acre? I don't even remember. I think a quarter an acre, or even an acre. So it's not real rural zoning. It's more, you know, 1 acre lot type of things where you've got a large water user that's moved in and is lowering the water table, and folks are having to deepen their wells. But there is an existing municipal service. Maybe it's not, you know, within 100 feet or 200 feet, but at least being able to figure out how you can have those wells abandoned and connected to a current or an existing water supplier.
Thanks, Chris. Any other questions? We have 15 minutes until we adjourn, so we're going to plow right through the rest of this agenda. Item 11 is a discussion and possible action regarding water right applications filed with the Nevada State Engineer. It's in your backup. I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to review those.
Madam Chair, just a couple of comments, if I may?
Mm-hmm.
Unless
please.
folks have any questions. Let's see here. There is, so, let's see. Since I sent this out, there have been a couple of applications filed that are listed on the monthly report, and this is what I was getting at with the state engineer, that they're listed on the monthly report. They're listed in their database, but there's no application that's been uploaded. And one of them is 95121, which is Gratian Uvalde. He's got an application in Basin 174 for Jake's Valley in White Pine. It's an industrial. And And then an application in Ione Valley for a mining and milling operation. It's 95133 to 95137 for a total combined duty of 1,200 acre feet. What we often see in a situation like this is when it's listed on the monthly report with no uploaded application, when the application is actually uploaded, we'll see that it may or may not be a change application. Right now, they're not listed as change applications, so I wanted to highlight those. As far as any of the applications on the monthly reports for January, February, and March, the only other one is 94901 in Basin 141, which is, it's called Seractibus Land Mining Cattle in Nye County. That was returned, so it was submitted, it was returned, so it's not out for publication.
Oh, that's Sarcobatus.
Sarcobatus, thank you.
Yeah.
It's not over, what's interesting about that basin is it's not over appropriated, but it is under an
Yeah.
order from the state engineer for preferred use for municipal.
I think that's also where Commissioner Strickland was referring to the little data center that went in. It was right there in
okay.
Sarcobatus Flat.
Well, anyway,
That is correct, Chair. Thank you.
I don't know if Nye County has any concerns about that. I just thought that because it was, the preferred use is municipal, whether or not that was even in the area that's designated, or if not, there's any other issues. Doesn't Tonopah have a well in that area?
Not in
No?
Sarcobatus.
Okay.
That's
Too far away, Jeff.
Okay. I don't have my
Yeah.
map in front of me. Okay.
That's okay.
Of course not.
All right. The other application is in Ralston Valley, and that is a shared basin between Nye and Esmeralda County. And that is, which one is that? Well, I don't have that one. I'll take another look at that. Get a hold of the folks in Esmeralda and Nye. The other thing that's in your packet is just a status report of all the protests that I could find.
Yeah,
that we
what's the
filed.
status of the Ioneer protest? We delegated the authority to you to withdraw if there was a...
We're close, but I'll let Commissioner Perez.
Commissioner Perez from Esmeralda County, the status of the Ioneer. We have, Ioneer called me personally and said that they were willing to sign the agreement that we came up with. And right now, we're in the process of getting the people together to
Okay.
probably accept
That's good
it.
enough. That's good. Thank you, Fred.
Unless anybody has any specific applications that they were interested in talking about, that's all I had.
All right. Any questions? We'll move to item 12. This is the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quickly, in your packet is an appeal to the Department of Interior Board of Land Appeals. I spoke to the chair and vice chair about this. This was a record of decision that was issued by the Southern Utah BLM office to approve a pipeline project for an interbasin transfer in southern Nevada. Central Iron County building a pipeline to move water out of Pine and Wawa valleys north of them. We had submitted pretty copious comments back in 2023 about this project. We also filed a protest with the Utah Division of Water Resources over the water rights. And so they're two separate issues. The water rights protest and application, which was protested by a number of entities and individuals, is pending with the state of Utah. This record of decision, the final EIS, as I understand it, was issued like on a Thursday or Friday with final comments due by the following Monday or Tuesday. And this was one of those fast expedited EISs, but had been in the works for many, many years. Anyway, I was approached about having CNRWA be a party to this appeal. And, well, initially it was going to be an appeal for judicial review. I wasn't real certain that we could do that without having board approval, but we figured out that the next step needed to be exhausting the administrative remedy, which is within the Department of Interior and their Board of Land Appeals. So that's what this is. It's an extension of really the work that I was authorized to do on behalf of CNRWA on this project. It's been sent. You can see who was on there. We did this because, it's something that, well, is an important project that we should be keeping our eye on, but more importantly, it does potentially impact White Pine County, which is a member county, and that's why we got into this in the first place. Even though it's wholly within Utah, the impacts could extend into basins in White Pine County. So
Basins don't recognize state lines.
That's exactly right. And then the last thing I want to mention is I did send out, and if you didn't get it in your email or you need me to resend it, the Schroeder Law Office's summary of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the Baker Ranches versus Department of Interior over the Baker Ranches vested water rights. And you can still watch it, or I guess you can watch an archive video of it. It was hard to watch because, there's a situation now because of the way that at least the Chief Justice was viewing this based on her questions, was that somehow, the way this is likely to end up is that the Bakers won't have an option for an appeal to anybody unless the state engineer decides to open up or amend the existing decree. We haven't seen the opinion, so that's not 100% certain, but there was a lot of concern about questions about whether or not, the federal government could even participate in the adjudication, even though the McCarran Amendment hadn't been enacted at that time. So we'll wait and see on that. And then there's some other legal cases, but I'll defer those to the next meeting just for the sake of time.
Okay, we'll let you. Thanks. Questions for Jeff? We'll move to item 13, which is board member and executive director comments. Board members, directors, do you have any comments, questions? I have one issue that I want to bring up. I'm sure it is not lost on you that in your backup, every single meeting, Jeff sends out a very detailed report with every minute he spent on every phone call or answering every email and every receipt for a hamburger that he got. What I'm proposing is that he brings forward at the next meeting a flat fee contract so we don't have to have all this in his backup. We do have independent monitoring of expenses through the Elko County Finance Department and Comptroller. So they're going to be reviewing all of those things anyway. If there are any board members who think this is not prudent action and we need to leave things the way they are, not going to hurt my feelings at all.
Nor mine.
Or Jeff's. But I just thought, in the interest of saving time and paper, and we're going to reimburse these expenses anyway, that we just go with a flat fee contract. So
If you need a motion for that, Madam Chairman,
no.
I'd be happy to make that one.
Yeah, I just want to hear what the board's thoughts are about bringing this back on the next agenda for us to discuss in more detail and vote. And if you don't have a problem with that, we can drag that horse out at the next meeting and beat it some more. All right. Any other comments from the board? Jeff, our next meeting.
July 17th is our next.
July 17th?
It's 3 months away.
We could do July 17th. I was actually thinking maybe we would want to push it into August a little bit, but that's up to you.
Any particular reason?
No, just, I don't know.
Okay.
No. I mean, so I know NACO meets on the 31st, August 28th. Let me, make sure I'm even here the 17th. And I'm happy to do it on the 17th. And of course, that also depends on if we're, we want to have it here, whether Churchill County can. Okay. So July 17th is what we're looking
Yeah.
at, Tara?
Yeah.
Is good?
Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Everybody okay? Well, I have something going on the 17th, but I'm only Okay. I'm on the NSSAB. Oh, yeah.
I mean, we could push it to the 24th if you want to.
Yeah, let's do the 24th.
Tara,
And that's personal too, because I'll be able to make my Elks Lodge meeting the night before. I miss 4 meetings a year and they're always around CNRWA. All right, so our next meeting, Friday, July 24th. Same bat time, same bat channel. Public comment. This is our second public comment period in this meeting. As you know, the board does not take any action on items that are discussed under public comment until they are included on a future agenda as an action item. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, public comment is closed and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.